motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate File 323 be withdrawn from the Committee on Civil Law and Data Practices Policy and given a second reading and placed on general orders.
Senator Pappas on that motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like a roll call, please, on this motion.
A roll call will be granted.
Members, Senate File 323 would place a constitutional amendment on the ballot if passed by this body. It would say simply, do the voters of Minnesota want to place the ERA into our Constitution? The language would be, equality under the law shall not be abridged or denied on account of sex. I'm moving to pull this bill out of committee because women have waited long enough. The Equal Rights Amendment, or the ERA, was written in 1921, 100 years ago, by famed suffragist Alice Paul, leader of the National Women's Party. It was introduced 2 years later into Congress in 1923 by the Republican Party at Alice Paul's request. The ERA was intended to enhance and bolster the 19th Amendment, yet remains unratified 98 years after its introduction, almost a full century past its drafting. Numerous Republican Party members, including President Ford and President Nixon, were in support of its passage, and the ERA was in the Republican Party platform until the 1980s. The original language, often cited as the Lucretia Mott Amendment, was revised in 1943 to more closely align with the 15th and the 19th Amendments. In 1972, this revised language was passed by the U.S. Congress. But as you all know, it needs to be ratified by 38 states. So,
Senator
Mr.
Pappas,
President, yes?
The motion before the body is to move Senate file, withdraw it from committee, not on the merits of the bill. So to the motion in front of us.
Mr. President, I need to convince the body, however, of the importance of making the motion. So if I might continue, I am trying to give a little context here as to the history, but I'll try to make it short and move on to...
brief description, Senator Pappas, of the bill, but the question before the body is on the motion.
So, Mr. President and members, I'll move on to why we should put this into the Minnesota Constitution, which is what this proposal does. So it stalled at the national level because 35 states ratified by the deadline of 1982. But even though 3 more states have recently ratified, it still has not been certified by the U.S. Congress.
Mr. President.
So that's why I think it's really important that
Senator
we
Pappas,
vote on this today to put it into the Minnesota Constitution.
Senator Pappas, hold on one moment.
Oh, sorry, Mr. President.
Senator Benson, please state your point of order.
I rise to a point of order under our Rules 36.2 to the merits of the urgency of moving a bill out of committee. I could see being a point to answering the question that is before the body, but an extensive history of why the language of the bill has been drafted the way it's been drafted, I do not believe answers the question before the body. Is there an urgency to move this out of committee and bring it to the floor today?
Mr. President?
Senator Pappas, as I mentioned, please speak to the merits of the motion,
Yes.
not the merits of the bill. And as Senator Benson said, Rule 36.2 says the member shall speak only to the question under debate, which is what I had mentioned. So, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Benson, I'm not asking for us to declare an emergency. This requires 41 votes. I'm simply asking us to place it on general orders. That's the motion. Once it's on general orders, if the body agrees, then I will offer a motion to declare an emergency. But I need the body's agreement, 41 votes, in order to place it on general orders. And more of the reason why that needs to happen is it has not received a hearing in civil law. And I think this is that the Minnesota people, Minnesotans deserve to have this discussion, and we, their representatives, should have this discussion. So I think we need to discuss it since it wasn't heard in the committee of the whole. Some of you are new here and may not know what the committee of the whole is, but that's basically all of us today on the floor and in side rooms and on remote. We should be able to discuss this as a group. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I know there are other members here who would also like to make the case that we should discuss this as a committee of the whole.
Okay, members, the motion before the body, just so everyone is clear, is to withdraw Senate File 323 from the Committee on Civil Law and Data Practices Policy and put it on general order. So that is the question before the body. Discussion on that motion. Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd encourage members, I do not support the motion to withdraw. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion in front of the body. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think there is an urgency for bringing it out so we can all discuss this. This bill has been in committee, has not received a hearing. I believe Senator Pappas has asked for it. I think predecessors to her have asked for hearings on this as well. And it's been almost 50 years now since the federal ERA was submitted to states. And it strikes me as a male who's been on the other side of who's been discriminated against on this, that this is something that all of us on the Senate floor ought to take up. So I strongly urge support for this. Equality under the law shall not be abridged or denied on account of sex is something that belongs in the Minnesota State Constitution. I urge your support to bring it to the floor.
Further discussion on the motion to withdraw. Senator McEwen, followed by Senator Kent. Senator McEwen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to speak in favor of withdrawing Senate File 323 from the committee and placing it on general orders. There is absolutely an urgency in this body to take this up immediately and to consider it. One of the reasons why we have this urgency is that it is true that we have a number of protections for people based upon sex within our law. However, we do not have an Equal Rights Amendment, which would form the basis for protections based on sex under the law. As this body knows, we have a long history of women having to overcome stereotypes that have been placed within the law, both statutory and common law. Because we don't have an Equal Rights Amendment in Minnesota, there is that critical element missing. So this is urgent. There is an urgency in this. We've seen over and over again in case law where high courts of the land have determined that the laws that we have in place now, from the Commerce Clause to the Equal Protection Clause to various labor laws,
Mr. President.
have been
Senator
insufficient
McEwen,
to protect the rights of women.
Mr. President.
Senator McEwen, Senator Benson, hold on. Members, the question before the body, and Senator Pappas mentioned this earlier, is not to declare an urgency, and it's not on the merits of the bill. The discussion before the body is to withdraw Senate File 323 from the Committee on Civil Law and Data Practices Policy and put it on general orders and give it its second reading. So that is the discussion right now on the motion to withdraw, not on the merits of the bill, and as Senator Pappas said, not to declare an urgency, but on the motion to withdraw. So on the motion to withdraw Senate File 323, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that the remarks that I have made in regard to the insufficiency of our laws goes exactly to this point of why we need to hear Senate File 323 now and why we need to bring it before this body. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to withdraw. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of Senator Pappas's motion to withdraw Senate File 323 and place it on general orders. And this really is a question about time. Why now? And the point has been made that this bill has been before us but not heard in committee. This is a question that has come up over the recent years. But what I want to talk about is, in my lifetime with this question, people have said we don't need to do this because, you know, equality exists. Well, I want to point to what has happened to women in this last year since we most recently had this debate, and how many women have been adversely affected specifically because of the pandemic and the systems that we have in this country. So I can't think of a better moment than right now as we are emerging from this pandemic and have a chance to make things better than to withdraw this the Senate file from committee and put it on general orders. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to withdraw. Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise in support of my colleague Senator Pappas and her motion. I can think of nothing more important to me as a woman to hear this. It has not been given a hearing. We have requested a hearing on this. And my experience as a new senator shows me we have plenty of time to talk about other things. I don't see the urgency for today. We have 2 bills on the docket, and I've been waiting for this moment since I've been in 2nd grade, 1972. So I strongly urge you to acknowledge my colleague's request and move this out of committee.
Further discussion on the motion to withdraw. Senator Rude.
Mr. President, I too have a bill on the ERA. It's Senate File number 31, and it did not get a hearing either. And I'm not withdrawing it out of committee, but I think if members want to look at Senate File 31, it's a resolution that states exactly why this is inappropriate to do now, how the ERA amendment is a relatively dead issue. It did not meet any of the deadlines that were put forth by Congress. The Minnesota State Legislature did not think it necessary to do then, and I don't think it's necessary to do now. Please vote against this.
Any further discussion on the motion to withdraw? Members, this requires 41 votes in order to prevail. Senator Pappas?
Mr. President, I just want to clarify that I may have confused people when I talked about the national ERA, but it was part of my argument as to why we need to pull this bill out of committee and hear it in the Minnesota legislature, because this would put the issue before Minnesota voters on the ballot this fall, so they could decide if they want an ERA in our Minnesota Constitution. That's what this bill would do, and I urge members to pull it out of committee and put it on general order so we can have a more thorough debate. Thank you.
The Secretary will take the roll on the Pappas motion.